No.
We have.
The discussion, forgot about that part.
Actually, before we get going, and maybe it's not for discussion at this exact minute, but it's just a general question to Louisa, Tabita, and Richard. Have we finalized a date yet?
No.
Maybe
Actually,
we. Before we get going, and maybe it's not for discussion at this exact minute, but it's
a good idea. Why don't we try to do that early? And maybe some others will come in.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
well, I do want to be cognizant of DCP's time, though.
I think form to vote, right?
Okay, so to take a few minutes, I think some people were asked to provide their preference.
Between Mondays and Wednesdays.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. And I remember just writing in Wednesday.
I sent a poll out, and unfortunately, the poll was pretty inconclusive in that it was split exactly even.
Well, we're going to have somebody make the.
Can we vote again tonight?
Yes,
I mean, twice.
let's vote right now.
May I just ask, so I want you to, but if we can, is there anything particular, Max, that we have to consider for the future to the extent we can predict between Monday and Wednesday? It will be a bigger committee, and we will meet here. Is there anything that we should pay attention to about that? Or just go ahead and vote?
It gives more time.
As far as my personal schedule, I can make both work. I do sometimes have another meeting that falls on the current land use date, but it's not regular and it's no problem.
It's the second Monday of the month versus the third Wednesday.
I could do a Monday if it's later than the first and second Monday, but I think we have.
Should we just take a quick poll?
Is there a special
Wednesday
meeting
or
on Monday? Because it used to be housing. But what
Well,
moves
that's
on
the
there?
idea. We're picking up
We're
on
picking
housing.
between the housing meeting and the land use meeting. And deciding which one.
Are there any other
Yeah, next,
possible dates?
is there another option of neither of the historic ones that is
There certainly could be. Off the top of my head, I'd have to then go back to the calendar and kind of look, and then I could send something out. An alternative is I could actually send one more poll out to the to everyone in what was both the individual version of the committees.
Why don't we see if there are any other dates that we can all agree on. What if we disregard it so far?
So yeah, maybe that's a good idea. What I can do is I can send something out, and I can look at all the other possible dates of the month that are open to. Maybe it is better to just start it from scratch, just to make sure, especially since we are now more concerned about attendance. And then also I do want to be cognizant of DCP's time too. I do see Ariel and Jennifer are both here now.
Yeah, let's do that and for DCP.
Okay, sorry.
I think what we're trying to do is to see if we have the makings of a resolution on commercial aspects of it to the yes. Last month. And we agreed, I thought we agreed that everybody submitted their comments, including before now, and Louisa has.
And they were very good.
Yeah, I submitted mine as well.
Yeah,
I didn't.
that was very good. Yes, he responded to questions you raised, I think. Yeah.
Did you send that?
Ariel and Jennifer, maybe you guys want to start by introducing yourselves. We can start there.
Yeah. Those are my responses.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for having us here again. And I hope that you know me by now. I'm Ariel, and I am a planner from the Manhattan office at DCP, responsible for CB7 related projects. And with me today is Jennifer Gravel, who is a member of our community planning and the civic engagement division. And I know that when we presented the City of Yes for Economic Opportunity proposal for you in November. You said that you had to take time to digest the proposal and discuss. And we know that you probably would have a lot of questions about it after you take time to read it and think about it. And we're here tonight to answer any of the questions that you may have regarding the proposal.
Yeah, thanks, Ariel. So I'm Jennifer Gravel. I've been with City Planet on and off since 2004, and mostly within our strategic planning wing, but more recently involved in the community engagement. And we'll do our best to answer any questions you have tonight. If we don't have an immediate answer, we'll certainly get back to you as soon as possible with a response. And, just happy for the opportunity to be here, and hope we can answer most of your questions tonight.
I think I hear.
Yeah, I think.
I don't like.
Louisa, you have your hand, please go ahead.
I can do that. Okay. On proposal number 1, which is about the fact that grandfathered stores that are vacant cannot be that they should be returned to the use that they're supposed to be. I'm sorry, I'm not saying this right. Grandfathered stores.
It's a 2-year limit on grandfathering is limited.
Right. And what you want to do is remove the 2-year limit. Now, normally I would disagree with that, but the fact that we have all these problems with vacant storefronts means that, yes, I would agree with that, except for stores that are in a historic district. And because they're in a historic district and they're grandfathered, it seems to me that they really must go back to the grandfathered use no matter what. And have you considered that of just picking that out of the taking off the 2-year provision?
So I want to make sure I understand that you're generally supportive of the change, which is to allow the stores to reoccupy even beyond 2 years, except for in a historic district. Is that? And am I understanding the question correctly? Okay. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the non-conforming storefronts are in fact historic. I mean, they were built as storefronts, and I think, yeah. What was that?
I'm sorry.
We're having difficulty hearing the end of what you said.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Now we can.
Yes.
Okay. I'll move my microphone a little closer. Hopefully that helps. Yeah, so a lot of the storefronts in that are perhaps there, although they don't have commercial overlays today, many of those stores were built as storefronts, and the historic the space actually is historic in many senses. And we see, I can't speak to specific examples, but it's not uncommon for historic districts to have these basically legacy spaces that, because of the zoning, if a store were to go out of business because they don't have that commercial zoning, after 2 years it can't be reoccupied, even though that space may have been built and has for decades operated as a store. So what this zoning recognizes is a couple things. One is that character is in many places, in fact, although the rules don't allow the discontinuance in historic districts currently, is in fact kind of a historic use. And second, then particularly post-pandemic, this 2-year sort of clock that gets placed on it is really often not enough time to really find a tenant for that space. And so what we find is a lot of these spaces just sit vacant. It's not as if they don't particularly function well as what else you might use in a residential space, which is perhaps something to service the building, a bigger lobby or amenities to serve the building. They really kind of want to be in a function as storefronts. So I mean, that's our logic. We're certainly, if you have sort of examples on the Upper West Side where that doesn't make sense, we're certainly happy to take a look at that and think about if that rule if it could be applied differently somewhere else.
I think that the proposal actually serves to keep the historic aspect of it rather than destroy it.
But the thing
Because
is that
it's
after
allowing,
the 2 years,
Yeah, but you'd have to go to LPC.
we're getting rid of the 2 years
right,
provision, which means that it can be commercial, it can be whatever. You know, but in a historic district, those are uses that have been there for a long time, and
the 2 years eliminates the historic uses. Doesn't, it doesn't,
I know.
but eliminating and taking away the 2 years means that 3 years or 4 years later, the historic use can be done, even though it's
It
not
could, but
conforming.
it's not going to, you know that, and I know that. The thing is that this protection of grandfathered uses, we're getting rid of them because of the economic situation right now. However, in a historic district, I'm saying that it should not be, because if we are protecting the buildings in a historic district, and we're saying you have to come to preservation if you want to put in new windows. Certainly, if you want to put in, you have to keep the grandfathered use rather than being able to put in a new use willy-nilly. That's what I'm saying. Follow what I'm saying, Jen?
I think so. I mean, I guess I'm a little confused if you are supportive of the current use that's there now. I mean, this provision would make it easier for those spaces to continue to operate. It's typically a retail use. If we weren't to have this provision, if a store were to go vacant for more than 2 years, a retail use couldn't move back into that space.
What?
You could put in a dog kennel.
But it'd be like a cute historic dog kennel, right? You wouldn't have to like,
Right.
versus
And aren't they subject to landmarks approval anyway?
Yeah, but if it was a storefront and it was built as a storefront, then Landmarks is gonna have a whole big issue with you turning it into something residential.
I don't think they're talking about turning it into something residential.
Well, that's the only use that's left. Or doctor's office.
I think in general,
They're doing special use.
I think in general,
Yeah.
if there have been retail uses in general in the districts that we're talking about, and then focusing on the historic, I think that we should try to encourage the continuation of retail uses as appropriate in historic districts and as appropriate elsewhere within the zoning and so on. I think retail should be encouraged, especially when it has existed in the past. There might be different kinds of retail, and the city could benefit from that.
There are no controls.
Well, I often not, if there's a way that we could put in a couple of like standards that I don't
That
know.
I'm saying, by keeping the existing 2-year provisions on historic districts, you are keeping a certain amount.
I guess I think with removing the 2-year window passes, and then the owner would be like induced because it would be a non-conforming use, they'd have to do something to turn it to residential or just leave it as it is vacant. Giving the longer than the 2-year window, you give them the flexibility to return to the grandfathered use or to do what we see inducing them to otherwise not 2-year window. So it's like this would give them flexibility to keep the historic aspect of the store or to go to what is a conforming use and make it residential. So I feel like it's a win to have this flexibility, either to keep the historic nature or it goes to the conforming zoning, right?
I think that's right.
I think that is right. It's not written as well as we could be helped, but I think that's right.
I think the reason concern though is that it could be a different commercial use let's say you don't do much to them.
But within the 2-year window, it could always become a commercial use, right? But
It could become a commercial, the way the existing zoning is, it could become a commercial use within that use group category. Now, they're changing and expanding use group category.
Exactly.
So, and some of them are, like amusements. Right, have expanded and, could have so basically an arcade thing, which is very strange. I'm pointing this out that this is a potential issue that we have been very careful about historic districts, about what is allowed. And I'm willing to, drop the 2-year prohibition for other commercial uses, given the fact that we have so many empty storefronts. But that in historic districts, I felt that this was important because of the emphasis that we put on preservation. I'm just sorry. Putting out how I feel
But
that.
if you look at most of our blocks that are actually in a historic district, 200 feet of any of these blocks is already,
100.
so 100 on this end, 100 on that end, are for the most part already subject to the commercial use anyways. It's only that,
They have to be
Middle.
because that corner building is the lot is usually 100 feet.
right, but I'm saying that 100, that, and some of our districts, I can't remember exactly where, maybe deeper than that. Maybe not in our district, but elsewhere, someplace in the city that commercial district is actually 125 feet deep in some occasions.
Sure.
Some
There's
places.
some
I
on
think,
each side.
what you're focusing on a different one of the proposals. You're focusing on the proposal which consolidates all of these uses and creates basically 4 categories. Which, but
Well,
But
it's
the-
something that has to be considered.
yeah, but the as I understand this ruling, this proposal, it gives the developer or the landowner the option of installing a use which was okay when the building was built. So it would revert to the old.
That would be the current zoning, but according to this, it would also give the building owner the right to have that space occupied by any of the new uses that would be allowed.
That would be true if you had it to the other. That would be true no matter what.
No, and if you have a 2-year limit, you would have to be grandfathered use.
No, but after you do it.
After the 2 year.
Introduce the current zone. So,
It's a
no, I think.
I'm letting it out that I think that it's a problem in terms of this, the historic district, of which we have no. But, there's a lot to go through and there's more to discuss.
Yeah, I think so.
maybe we can tuck it into the proposal 6 discussion, because that's what we talk about
Yeah.
protecting uses of historic districts. But
Yeah.
Can I ask a global question? So we're looking through all of these proposals. The proposals, I think, are meant to apply to the whole city, right? All the boroughs, which are obviously very different in character from our district. If we were to say, hey, we don't want this or that, are we potentially going to affect the rest of
We can say that we don't want this or that in.
this
what's in it.
district? Okay,
mean,
and there's
we do have-
an opportunity to sort of carve it out.
Yeah,
that way?
and in fact, at the end of the presentation of the
Mhm.
last month, there's a listing of the proposals that will apply to the.
So,
And
yeah.
then, there are lots of places in that this applies to community boards 1 through 6.
Okay. Can we, may I just ask, can we see again, if not now, but just to review that point that you made of what it really applies to board 7, so we know we can see that and as part of eventually, and it's in there, and then included, once we have reviewed exactly what it's saying, we know what our particular resolution will
Well, when they
be.
listed the proposals.
Yeah.
which is, yeah, listed. You know,
Right,
yeah, those are the ones that we have.
okay.
Look at things that have, residential, commercial uses on corners in residential districts, doesn't apply to us. We don't have the kind of areas that Queens does that have
Exactly.
wide,
Really.
swaths of residential.
All right, let's,
Well, one of the interesting things I think Ethel is alluding to is we have a number of special districts that we can use to our advantage.
Exactly.
City planning really doesn't care that much if we change those. And sort of the citywide, okay, I'm being optimistic.
So, not to.
I've done some of these, I mean, in other parts of the city.
And get the
Yeah.
total.
let's, you know,
We should see
Louisa,
what we've got.
your next, the next proposal that you discussed, is proposal to the broadening. And I have to say that I'm sort of stymied by that because I can't, it's hard to. Get that production. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to kind of imagine what the result would be. I think for part of it is that it should apply to all, you know, C1 and C2, the same rule. But I'm not sure what the effect is of consolidating these groups. Four categories. You know, maybe. Can you guys help us?
Yeah, I mean, is the question about, I guess there's a couple proposals. One is the sort of, there's the sort of the broad reform of the use groups to modernize it and make it a little more rational. And then there's the other where we're taking like when you have districts that are similar intent, like a C1 and a C2, they're neighborhood commercial districts, but they have some distinct sort of distinctions in terms of the uses permitted to basically make it so that they provide the same uses with given the sort of the sort of goal of this proposal is to allow more flexibility and create some sort of to allow some reasonable things that we think are appropriate to happen on neighborhood commercial streets to allow those to happen. So, I mean, I think an example that I think that we give that we have given before is that a C1 district allows bike sales, but it doesn't allow bike rental or bike repair, but a C2 does. So if you had a successful bike shop, you wanted to start repairing bikes, you could do it across the street, but you couldn't do it in a situation where you might have a C1 on one side and a C2 on the other. You'd have to move across the street or move to a different neighborhood. I think they're small scale operations, they're neighborhood services. We see them as sort of appropriate in this context. So I mean, that's the intent of that. So it's taking those uses that are allowed in C2 but not C1 and saying they're allowed in all C1s and C2s.
That's what,
Yeah.
What concerns, I think it concerns me a little bit is that I assume that the original intent of all these use groups and all these listings of various occupations were intended to protect the surrounding community from something that might be considered obnoxious or bothersome. And this consolidation eliminates the distinction among all these various things. Is there some protection in what you're proposing? Are there uses which have been historically considered improper in C1 or C2, which are now going to be lumped in with the other categories?
Yeah. No, it's certainly not in any way that's intentional. I would say that you're correct. And there was probably in 1960 when the rules were first written, some notion that some things may be more appropriate in one area than the other. But 62 years later, and after decades of sort of actually seeing on the ground what the real impacts are of those businesses, we don't believe that those distinctions are meaningful anymore. And that the the sort of the context of where C2s are mapped are not that different than the context of where C1s are mapped for the most part. And that those distinctions really don't make sense today, particularly given that businesses just don't operate the same way they did in 1961. And we're trying to recognize, and they're not going to operate the same way in 50 years from now either. Hopefully it doesn't take us 50 years to fix whatever, however things might change. But the idea is that I think the notion here is that we want to be flexible. We want to allow businesses to sort of adapt in ways that are reasonable. And we're certainly not intentionally allowing things that we think are creating more nuisances here. In some proposals, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the uses are listed. It's a pretty robust list of what is not allowed and what's allowed, and it's very reasonable. Like I said in my email, things like animal slaughtering and tunnels are prohibited, and normal things that you would do in your home, making clay or things that are unobtrusive, right? And all the normal laws of what you can do as a resident, but still apply, right? Like can't do things that are noisy or smelly or whatever else.
Yeah,
All those.
What you're saying is that the noise code.
Well, the multiple dwelling law and.
That all still apply.
And
Yeah,
all the
but
housing
even
laws still are in
even
place.
within this consolidation, they've listed every single possible use and say what is not allowed and what is.
Every possible use is impossible, which is why we have the mess that the uses are now. The way it was originally set up is that C1 was supposed to be your local, whatever bodega was in 1961, a place that you could get milk like that, a dry cleaning place, things that would help people with. C2 was listed as repair. It was a repair place, a place that you would go to have things done, fixed, etc. Quite different. Now, I see no reason why bike sales should be in C1 and the other C. I mean, they should be together, but they therefore should be in C2. They're not C1. They're not buying milk at your local corn store. And that's what C1 was. It was a limited number of uses to help nearby residents every day.
And now we all face, as 50 years ago communities faced, because if you look at the listings of uses in 1925, 1940, some of them we don't even understand what is being talked about.
I do know what shoddy is. I looked it up.
Right.
Right.
So,
I'll tell you later.
I mean, I think I once looked up, and the street I live on 92nd Street, there were permissions for, I believe, only a stable there or something on one of those blocks, and it's all, you read it now and you say, whoa, what is that? May I finish?
Landmark Stables on 89th Street.
Exactly. But then may I just say for lastly, that at this point, and as recently as during COVID, when many of us became terribly upset by vacant stores and in many ways continue to be, I remember it's just 3-4 years ago, there were a number of proposals coming up about asking and making proposals for theatrical groups to be in store or to be presenting plays in some of the stores. And in order to provide animation, this is in the last 3 or 4 years, in order to do what? Change it from what was utterly undesirable, seemed to be vacancy. And so there are a number of things, because I think we worked on it, your former co-chair and I did a whole list of talking about vacancies and what we could possibly do, and some of it was bizarre. Lastly, I would venture that cannabis stores maybe a retail, some use selling whatever, are anathema to perhaps many different populations, but I also would not be surprised if they do not become maybe number one or two in uses that could be filling up vacant floors in many different.
I addressed that one specifically because
I'm sorry.
I'd like to address that one specifically. I'm actually responsible for a part of the social equity cannabis program in New York. So I'm not speaking as part of my agency or anything in
Yeah,
that
yeah.
regard. We have had discussions with the building department on this subject. And we are considered use group 6. Okay.
Yes, okay. I was-
It's equivalent to a tobacco store, a liquor store, or anything like that.
So
So
I think for our purposes.
that's the enforcement, discussion with the
I think
enforcement
we should
agency.
move on, but we should think as we do move on of what we in Board 7, what particular contribution on this particular point, because we can't be here all night, but we do want to essential, and it's essential that Board 7, like many other boards, but Board 7 hasn't been doing as much as it should be, and now it should be, makes as coherent a commentary on this new citywide proposal as we can. And we should do that, and that's what we should do in the best way tonight. And I thank Lisa at least for helping us, but then let's go on and then see where we get.
Let me just add one thing. One of the things that are missing, or at least that I did not see in the zoning, was C1 and C2 are limited in size. And that is very important. And one of the things that I noticed going through is that a lot of the size restrictions, they said there were duplications. No, there's a difference in the same store that was, you know, in a C46A district as a C2. They're different in size. And those size requirements are not. They're not duplications. It is that they were once a limited size in one district.
Related to the,
Right, you know,
It's
as
very
long as
important.
there are.
The same thoughts with the zoning.
No, but there still will be safeguards. Well, maybe not as rigorous, but there will be safeguards. If the person wants to bring a business into the community, because the things that are simply for, and we should be encouraged to do that. There are very few commercial uses that affect anybody's quality of life, even cannabis. We used to have tobacco stores every block.
We put that on the side, because every,
No, but I mean,
yeah, but that's not, it's actually packaged. There's no on-premises consumption. I'm not talking about all these guys that are around here, which have special
same thing.
illegal cannabis.
We're on the same
district, which-
side.
okay.
I don't
we
view
move on.
that as a non.
Ask, just, I guess, how are we gonna start putting together a resolution?
I'm making
Okay.
notes. So far, we've been, you know, on proposal 1. I think there's a consensus that we approve it, you know, even though Louisa doesn't. And now we're doing proposal 2, and I don't really hear any strenuous objections to that proposal either.
Okay.
Good.
Object, I mean, again, the idea of how the zoning resolution was written, starting in 1916, not 1961, was the idea of protecting residents. And it was you know, setting up guidelines of how residents should be, think Jacob Reese, of light and air for places that people live, that they should not be living next to factories, that the fumes were.
This says, factories are manufacturing. So,
The next one is gonna be small scale.
We'll get to that.
Commercial.
We'll get to that.
district.
Yeah, no,
I mean, we are there.
Yeah.
The thing is that the overarching proposal is kind of what I said was a laissez-faire commercial use.
That's right.
And you have to think about, do you really want this? Do you want to have chipping away at the protections for residents for peaceful enjoyment of your home? And don't shrug. It really is serious, and the way it is proposed is that they've taken certain rules that were made for special mixed-use districts that had been manufacturing districts and that had become mixed-use districts because residents moved in, like Soho. And they picked up those contained regulations and they're making them citywide.
Actually,
So that a residential district now has regulations that before applied to what had been manufactured.
Let's get a response.
Okay, no, let's hear
Yeah.
yeah, I just want to clear. I think we're talking about proposal 3, the small scale production. Is that? Yeah.
Yeah, we're still on 2.
Oh, we're still on 2. Okay.
Really, I think the question is, does the consolidation of these use groups, let's put aside, C1, C2, but the elimination of specific uses as, and consolidation of use groups, does it remove protections of, for residents who may not want to be next to the
No, I mean,
Sure.
the consolidation of the use groups is based on current industry classifications on how businesses operate today. And the intent of them is to in a local commercial district, those uses that are appropriate in a local commercial district, how they match to current definitions. So in many ways, it makes the zoning more relevant to how businesses operate today and not how planners thought they would operate 62 years ago. And looking to the future, when we have, when the zoning was written, we didn't have really environmental regulations on the books. We didn't have a lot of the codes that exist today that actually provide better safeguards. But the uses that are allowed in terms of the nature, in terms of who they serve and whether they generate foot traffic or nuisances, are pretty consistent with the intent of, I think, what Louisa was describing in terms of quality of life and small scale. Now, that said, I will also say when the zoning was written in 1961, separation of uses was kind of the law of the land and de rigueur in planning circles. And we have not we, New York City, but planning in general has really, I think, more embraced how do we become a more dynamic mixed use city. And I think post-pandemic is something that we also think is something we need to think about how New York City, I think, which is probably one of the world's best mixed-use cities. It's why a lot of us live here. But I mean, what can we, that said, people live here. We need safeguards. We need reasonable assurances that, people will be able to sleep at night. So the intention here is not to have it, open it up to anything everywhere. We are creating more flexibility, no doubt. And I will say in proposal 3 does open up light manufacturing and uses to more areas of the city. But they have to meet very stringent environmental standards that exist today. We've specifically excluded anything that could really have any unhealthy externalities, anything that might be unsafe. And we're limiting the size here. So it's really your jewelry maker, your clothing maker, really artisanal, small scale things that are appropriate, that benefit from foot traffic, that keep the neighborhood interesting. And that, lots of other cities permit in their commercial districts. So I would say we are not really sort of doing anything totally extraordinary here, and it's sort of what is already sort of done in many other places and in places where people live. So I firmly believe that we are not, that combining these uses and collapsing these uses, although it's a different, it looks like a different paradigm, the intent is the same and it's still very safe, and in many ways I think is a lot more reflective of how businesses operate today.
And uses that were not, uses that were not permitted under the old zoning still would not be permitted, that.
One major exception, which I just mentioned, are these are this sort of clean production uses. That's new. We are, that is, you could not open on a in a C2 commercial district on the Upper West Side. In most places, you could not open a sort of a small scale manufacturer. Yeah.
Let's move on.
I have a question. When I read this, I thought this was a good thing because it encourages variety and as our populations grow, more opportunities for shopping or whatever. But then I started walking down Broadway a couple of days ago, and there is creep happening. It might be the dry cleaner on the ground floor, and then a baker on the second floor, and then there's a what do you call it, a catering service on the third that isn't part of, you know, they're collapsing it into, oh no, that's part of the operation on the second floor. We don't have anything to do with it. And what I'm worried about is a checks and balances kind of review, if these things can come before the community to see if in fact the if that use has outgrown that space, to keep it as a two-story. I think that's most of the commercial type things, so that we don't get creep and we lose the housing or schools on the third and fourth floors. I know, but it feeds into this. We've had this problem before in terms of trying to segregate, solve one problem, but we've created a bigger one. And so I'm kind of concerned that our streetscape is not going to be a walk-in type. It could go to 2 or 3 stories, and I think that would be tragic for the Upper West Side.
It already is. That is, I think we should try to get somewhat specific in a moment, because we should list eventually. I'm just giving you a number. Thinking of Ward 7, there's a lot of stuff here, and I also provided to the co-chairs a 2-page summary of what this organization's Citizens Housing Planning Council listed, and they are in favor of this, but in the 2-page, I sent it to you just so that you could, we have to pick out what from there.
One at a time.
Yeah, but okay, but all I'm
We're not
saying.
gonna get anywhere if we go
Can we-
skip to the citizens
Okay,
council.
I'm not asking to do that. I am suggesting that we move forward, taking the list that, let's say, Louisa provided. That may not be the one for everybody, but we begin to together determine what are the most important changes that we want to comment on in terms of Board 7. And what, okay, but we're going in different.
We're not going in
I
different.
would like to
we're
comment on
discussing-
what Paige said, because she talked about the streetscape. And if we have a light manufacturing on the ground floor, that is usually half of the block, that's 100 feet frontage on the block, and you know, you're going to have, we have streetscape regulations of what is allowed in the window. You're not going to have that if we have light manufacturing. It's going to be probably closed off, whatever, and we're going to lose, you know, when you have a fighting of streetscape regs against, oh, we can put clay manufacturing,
We
but you see the
do-
problem.
proposal two before we get.
Yeah, it is like we're still in shit.
Right.
But I think
Do we
it
have-
does impact, as you say, we have this problem continuously arguing amongst ourselves about the limitation and the appearance of the streetscape. And this will blow it up to another floor.
We've moved into free.
Well, have we, do we have a
We can go back.
consensus on two, two is
We can go
okay?
I feel like broadly, there seemed to be consensus that there's a need for the added flexibility that look at this to people, the restrictions.
All right,
provided.
so we're now on three.
Okay, now I'm.
Every main street in the Upper West Side is a commercial street. That is the problem for us. Except for, excuse me, except for West End, Riverside, Central Park West, but Columbus and 7 Broadway.
My view on light manufacturing, is that I would agree to it if it was ancillary to the retail.
Can you give an example?
Yeah, in jewelry making. You
Yeah.
have a jewelry front, and the back room, you got a couple of Swiss people putting watches together.
We have that. We
Yeah.
have jewel, there behind the jewel.
Or like, there's a brewery and there's a tap room required up front, like it couldn't just be a brewery with like
Yeah,
hills up front,
exactly.
you know, like.
Yeah,
But you
that,
also-
and that would address Paige's issue to some extent, or your issue on the streetscape. Yeah,
Except that on certain things like dry cleaning, most of it now, you drop your clothes off and then a truck comes and they take it to New Jersey or wherever, and your clothes come back. And if there's
Sometimes.
just sometimes, if that rule, if that procedure is easier for the dry cleaning company, they're gonna wanna do it on their premises. And that is environmental issues.
that's not.
I think they know.
But it
It would come under light manufacturing.
it would,
It's prohibited by other.
I would hope,
Yeah, I think
but
it would.
I don't know how, but then all of what bothers me is this is change for change's sake. Where we're gonna be diluting or invading perfectly good streetscapes that we're familiar with. I mean, how many retail stores do you need? How many have to go up 3 floors? I don't know. I just find that, I was trying to do some, research and there is none.
Well, there is actually a survey, community board by community board, where they account for it, and it's on the site. And we actually have scarily little true retail anymore, somewhere with
Right.
95% of our store.
Oh, I
frontage.
wasn't, I've seen that.
Yeah.
I remember working with it, but I thought it was a closed deal. I mean, you're right. All of the commercial areas are taken. I'm just worried about bringing in more.
No, okay, that's, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. Can I just, I know we're going by numbers, but I think we should determine soon what our most important points are with the help of these lists. I would offer that some of the discussion in the proposed legislation, I found confusing and worried, but I may not have understood it. And that was, I'm referring to the proposals in which certain kinds of commercial activity could be on the 6th floor in the middle of a residential.
Get to that, all right, we're not on there yet, we're not there yet.
But it's related.
It's not related, please, if we want to get out of here tonight, we have to go to the order. All right,
Number 5, we'll get it close.
so number 3, how do we feel about that? Do we approve it? Do we approve it subject to, there has to be ancillary or something else?
I like ancillary, but I think also it cannot be on the ground floor unless it is ancillary.
Or to have an ancillary, they place to be on the ground floor.
It cannot be
Above the ground.
above the ground floor unless it is ancillary, because there's gonna be ones that come in. Okay,
Well,
it's
where
two
it can
different,
be.
it's 2 different.
Yeah,
floors.
yeah.
The separate point, yeah.
What
also related
Yeah,
to.
we-
No, yeah,
I
the
think still
ancillary.
there's gonna be
You like that?
problems with the ancillary
Okay.
because what you're saying is that you're gonna have 100. In order for them to have light manufacturing, proper light manufacturing, this is stuff that Eric Hogan is trying to do. That you need space. In order to do the space, you're gonna still need that 100 feet along the ground floor. I would pick it up to the second floor or third.
You know, I've seen this
Actually-
in fact. And I'm more concerned about what's going to happen in the outer boroughs, not necessarily here. But what you end up with is 100 by 100, with this 25 feet of dress shop in the front and the back 75 feet are all sewing machines or some other kind
That's
of,
fine.
I've seen it.
That's
That's
what.
okay.
But then it doesn't go on the second, it technically doesn't go on the second floor
And it won't happen to the board, so. Okay, onward.
on the property
We
value.
care about loading dock.
No,
No, that's fine.
we're on, five.
Okay. Most controversial.
Yeah. This is the one, commercial uses on,
I thought that this got shot down.
I just
Well-
mentioned it when I was considered out of order, but it's number 5.
right, now you're in order.
Yes, it didn't take 2 years.
Okay.
And
The only way you can do it-
doesn't agree with us.
Yeah. But you would need separate elevators.
Yes.
You need 2 buildings within one facade. This is crazy.
It goes back to building sections.
What can you say?
Do you need a separate entrance or could you just dedicate one elevator to, let's say you turn in third floor?
Wait, elevator.
Problems with lobby security. Deliveries.
Realize we're sitting in one of those spaces right now.
Maybe
We have a separate stair. I know we share some of it with the lobby, but
So we have a separate entrance,
then we have a separate entrance,
separate elevator.
separate elevator. You actually use the building egress though.
So what
We have
was,
the egress as well.
what was,
Then we have another stair that way.
what was the CHPC comment about, like, how it wouldn't crowd out housing? Because that's my concern.
Yeah,
That's mine.
yeah.
So how did they say it's
Let
not
me
gonna
just
happen?
take a look here and see. You go ahead. So we
Okay,
don't
we can circle back.
Okay, I
Go on.
assume that co-op rules with overriders.
Co-op rules, residential leases by definition, all of this.
Yeah, exactly.
It seems to me that, unless the building is specially built, there's gonna be noise.
It's 15 feet of separation from three rooms, yeah, some sounds, I guess. Not over to be ineffective, but
That's not fine.
That's a very important issue because we're talking about putting commercial in residential. areas.
Now, first of all, we're having enough trouble getting all these vacant storefronts rented on. So why, and there is a dearth of space for residents. Why?
Yeah.
Why increase the amount of, why increase the area that can be used commercially and decrease the area that's gonna be used residentially?
The only time that I came across this was that churches would take over a 6th floor, something like that, in a building. And on Sundays, you would have hordes of people who were singing wherever this happened all over the place. And we had lots of complaints about it. We're not talking really about manufacturing, things like that. But we are talking about activities that would attract a lot of people that would have deliveries where there is a lot of car traffic that and parking. I can't think of any need for this. I mean, the only need that came up was these small winter churches that needed places.
or you want like a rooftop bar on your luxury residential building, like I can't. think of any-
We hear from city planning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why did, what was
Sure.
the reason?
Do you want me to give a little sort of context or background on sort of how this proposal came about? So I think this is probably less relevant for the Upper West Side, although it technically would would be applicable. This is probably really more likely in a new construction scenario where you might, build a building where you might actually want kind of a mix of commercial and residential uses. Residential is probably still going to win out in most scenarios, but in some places where we see sort of transitions, like places in Midtown where I think there's kind of sort of existential questions about what's happening there post-pandemic, having some flexibility about, how buildings are designed and how we let uses mix allows us to sort of think a little more creatively about how places like Midtown can evolve. So that's really some of for the upper stories above the second floor, where we allowing for some more sort of flexibility in how that happens. And we have seen occasionally, developers coming in and wanting to do this kind of thing, and the zoning being sort of rigid in allowing it. And although it's not something we see or would expect often, it's something in the instances where it's come forward, it's reasonable. And in the context of future, when we want to also make it easier to convert some of the office buildings in Midtown that are largely vacant, allowing that to happen sort of in a way that doesn't sort of wholesale require you to vacate a office commercial building and have residential in it, is something we want to permit.
Well, that's a different issue. That's not explicitly addressed in any of this. I agree with you that we should. Convert them.
Yeah, right.
But that's a separate issue and can be dealt with separately.
So can I make a suggestion? Because I hear her on like, the 12 FAR residential or 12 FAR cap, like in Midtown, maybe this would enable. I don't think this is applicable in Board 7. I don't think this is the kind of activity we want to see. Can we just say we don't think this should apply in our community?
Most of this frankly doesn't apply in
It
this,
doesn't.
community board.
I'd like us to get this.
Yeah.
Right, a lot of times they'll do commercial to the fourth or
Okay.
fifth floor.
All right.
Onward.
Moving on. 6. That's the one that we've already addressed, I think, modernizing the use group classification.
Right, but it is the aggregating, like eating and drinking with bike repair, with furniture shovels. All together in one, so it's going back to that little brief grandfather's shop, all of a sudden you can have bike repair or a kind of elegant little furniture showroom boutique. I mean,
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
Yeah, what's the downside?
I don't see it myself.
Well, there could be one for an impact on residents living above, on moving furniture daily or annually, whatever. And so the question is,
and bike repair is on the street.
right, and it just has to do with the scale of the manufacturing and where their supplies come from. Because that's the other thing, once you start putting together a workshop, there are deliveries. It could be wood, it could be bicycle wheels, it could be refrigeration parts. I don't know what it is, but I would think that would be of the true impact on our streetscapes, as well as deterring people from wanting to live in maybe starter housing or something.
I would no size restriction. That's again the problem.
Oh, size, good point, yes.
You're talking about, we're going back to 3.
No, I'm just talking about civic.
So we feel like there are safeguards in place, like in other parts of the law. I just don't know if the zoning resolution is the place to like deal with all these things. And that would be overly restrictive to our need for flexibility, right now, given the challenges. So I guess that's sort of the counter argument. Like I hear you on that there's not very quality of life, but I feel like it's a trade-off. It's my personal thing.
But yeah, the nature of the key, going back to 3.
Okay.
The deliveries may be a problem, like night. On the other hand, there's no greater problem than creating village. You can't get down Columbus Avenue like 4-wheel vehicles most of the day.
Whole Foods is a similar problem on
There are
'97.
loading docks though that are like.
But
this
the
is that.
But the reality is,
Yeah, I was saying the Whole Foods does,
I
so.
don't know about you, if you walk down West End Avenue, half the time, it's a loading berth top to bottom between UPS, Amazon, FedEx, half the space. That's a different issue. But it is an issue because one of the things that is in here is providing spaces so those trucks make single deliveries and then disperse from that. So that is actually in there too.
One of the problems is that they have removed size restrictions. Overall, where eating and drinking with entertainment used to have 5, and I know that it sounded crazy, and I had a chart at my desk. But it was tailored to different neighborhoods, what was possible there, how residential the neighborhood was. And taking out the size restrictions really is a problem.
Like note our concern in some way or like hedge our support of it. I feel like.
Example for 5 years.
Okay, Trader Joe's.
Okay. We're gonna-
There are size restrictions. That Trader Joe's is not because of food. You know, you go in and it's like, say it's supermarket. Okay. And there were regulations before 10,000 square feet or less, whatever. You just bring in the trucks, the traffic. We unfortunately, fortunately or not, are a very tight neighborhood. I mean, yes, I would like more, but there isn't any place for them. And we are now allowing it. Look at what happened on 84th Street. It isn't that they are now building buildings where they had, you know, taxpayers. They are tearing down 6 and 8-story buildings to build your 210-foot building.
Well, we've,
What, but without any zoning changes, right? So, I guess I don't see the.
No, what I'm saying is that we are a very tight neighborhood and we're going to start seeing buildings taken down in order to build.
Let's ask, are there size restrictions in the current zoning that are being eliminated?
Oh, yeah.
I have to confirm this. I believe the intent was to retain. Louisa, are you sort of referring to some of the 10,000 square foot limitations that currently exist in use group? That are, yeah. I believe that they're retained, but I want to reconfirm this before I get back to you. I'm actually looking at the zoning text now, so.
We can do that because I think, you know, there's an issue. There would be if that were eliminated, but I didn't see anything in what you presented that did that.
I will look up also, but I think one of them also is eating and drinking 200 more than.
So we have that, that's a step, yeah, that's our next.
You know, and that really is a problem in this neighborhood.
All right, we'll get to that one, get to that.
We'll put a pin in 6, and I can answer.
6, yeah, 6 is,
It's group consolidation.
yeah, it's 9. Now we're at 9.
Okay, or do we not want to go through ones that we didn't comment on?
Seven.
7, 8, or yeah, fine by me. I mean, urban agriculture. And,
Let's go. Read.
I tried to pick the ones that,
yeah. Okay, cool. Just double check.
all right. 9, expanding nightlife regulation. You're on.
Same thing. There were at least 5 different ones with the size. I would take out the ridiculous ones about dancing. I mean, that was just the
Right.
But the thing is, there were size regulations for clubs.
Are those eliminated?
So
Pretty much.
no, we're retaining the 250 person capacity limits in the neighborhood commercial streets. So which size limitations are you referring to?
For clubs, eating and drinking with music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're not changing the capacity limitations on that. We're just allowing dancing.
Down in the village, they are screaming about this one. What's like
Yeah.
because
They're not happy about people dancing, I guess. Yeah.
we support them.
They may want to reduce. Sorry.
It's not on.
No, but it was,
You never have less.
with the dancing, what happens is they tend to open late. Like, unless they're serving meals, like a restaurant, they open up like the pub does. It's
Big pubs, right.
And so the problem is it changes the, what do you call it, the biorhythm of the sleeping of people who live above or on.
Yeah, separate regulations, yeah, the liquor license law, different regulations.
Yeah, but
govern
it
that.
never, it's that easy, because what happens is you get clusters of people meeting at the street level. Party
out
in the
outside.
summertime, they can't handle the numbers, so and anyway, I'm just saying that some of these things are human activities that we cannot control and could change the appearance and calm, for lack of a better
Some
word.
of that we tried imperfectly in our comments on the restaurants, the sheds,
Yeah,
and so on.
look
So
what
I
we got.
think, yeah, but.
Richard,
okay,
I don't mean
Yes.
to interject, but there has been a member of the public that's had their hand up for quite a while. And she may actually have to hop off soon. So I just want to quick flag that for you. She's promoted. All of you just have to unmute yourself.
I'll for it.
Can I speak?
Go
Of
ahead.
course.
Yes, hello. Yes, the city of yes. Well, yes to what? Yes to increased density. And that's the last thing that we want around here. We don't want to increase density. I have the figures. In Brooklyn, the density per square mile is 40,000 people. In Manhattan, it's 75,000. And in Manhattan, on a busy day, it's 170,000. And that's what we should be talking about here. Are we letting, yes, meaning that we have new ideas to bring in more people and more business? That's the essential thing here. And once I have read it, but I don't know if I've read it as well as you people. But what's this idea of no ULURP? Since when did this happen? The important thing in ULURP is that people could talk. And now decisions are being made by a mayor and the governor, and then, I don't know, some 6 people. Those are the things that are terrible in this plan. And we seem to be talking only about very little things when they're very important things that have to be said. All right, thank you.
I don't believe it's on the table tonight that addresses ULURP from right there. There are other, there are other things that have been proposed that might restrict ULURP or community review, but it should be one. This is intended to create an as-of-right operation as currently exists, but modified. So I, what do we do about 9? Dancing?
Yeah, I'd like to respond to what Alex said. I mean, on an island with a fixed size, if you're trying to increase the housing stock, particularly affordable housing, and bring housing costs down, the only way to do it, just mathematically and physically, is to increase density. You're not going to create new housing on the island that had or within our district without increasing density. We'll have to do it in a sensible way, and that's what we're talking about with provisions here. We want to make it so you don't want to change the character of the neighborhood too much. We don't want to, make things inclusive for people. We're not talking about building, 4,000 story buildings or anything. But at some level, we have to increase density. If you want to.
By the way, when I was growing up, the density on the Upper West Side was significantly higher. Than
Yeah, exactly.
Because you had all those side streets occupied by dozens of families.
We're losing units, you know, not growing, because more people are combining apartments, and we're allowing apartments to be built.
Right.
So,
Wholeheartedly agree, and then refocusing us on economic opportunity, I think we do want more people patronize the village, that's the goal here.
And I do a seditious thing and try it, and that is to make a time frame when we want to have. I noticed how about 8:30 or something that we are just.
Making progress over there.
let's do that.
So how do we deal with trans nightlife? I don't see the issue, so you have to, somebody's got to explain.
Well,
It's not increasing, I don't think it's not increasing the capacity of any.
I think your argument is like the vibe changes when it's more of a damp environment. It changes.
And the issue is most of them have been suppressed in basements. And I remember the, the streamers were made of, fabric, and you could go through a jungle and all sorts of that. I can't even remember names of clubs.
Got around a lot.
I did. I went to a private school. What can I say? I'm just teasing. No, the issue for me for here is the time clock. For we want people to come and live in the neighborhood and work here and whatever. But then when you add the nightlife element where that starts at what, 8, 9 in the evening and goes until 4 o'clock in the morning or later. It all of a sudden we're in the entertainment business, rather than residential. And I had nervous thoughts about this a lot because it's very hard to control. That kind of entertainment and music, it's ad hoc. People just show up, and maybe there's only 10 people for one group, but the following weekend there's 1,000 trying to get into the door. So I've turned into such a sentimental and what do you call it? Unwilling to accept great change because I think it would deter our neighborhood. We've worked hard for all of these mixed-use buildings, even where there's, we accommodate everything from hospitals, care facilities, schools, et cetera. And now we're letting in a nighttime series of potential renters and owners that will be 24 hours.
Yeah, so I just ask, is there a way that, like, looking at method of operation, when they come to us for SLA approvals, we can control, we can say yes or no to dancing, even if it's permitted by zoning as of right? Is that so?
I think we know.
I can't, no, we can't say no, I think what she asked, we can't say no dancing, we can take into account the fact that dancing would be there.
When evaluating.
Right, when
But I, you know.
But we're
angels-
also only advisory on the inside.
People would line up outside the theater and the theater didn't provide. The theater did not provide sufficient lobbying space for people who wanted to buy tickets. And that was addressed, as I recall. And we might want to suggest something similar with dance.
Good idea. Okay.
I think we should bring that number down. It's 200 persons. I think we should bring it down by a lot. Having been on the BTI committee for years, one of the more recent issues that came up there was a couple years ago. There was a jazz club, I want to say. It was on the triangle between Broadway and West End, 106, 107.
Oh, yeah, place.
Now, so there are a ton of places on Amsterdam that are open till 4 a.m. Bars, they're incredibly well run, right? They have control of their staff.
One on Wednesday.
Yeah.
That one was an absolute train wreck with people congregating around, just smoke
No, smoke is still open.
Not
I think
smoke,
this is
sorry.
the other.
North
There was the
corner
one
of
next
us
to
is
it, yeah.
six to
It's a basement, it's like the low grade,
It's
and,
small.
It's closed now. But
yeah, it's.
That's
closed
actually
down.
residential district.
But the issue that I'm bringing up is that if you have an operator that can't manage all of that, but both the logistics and also enough staff to actually keep the crowds under control, it's an absolute train wreck and it brings out the community like in a very terrible way. Well, so I think the difficulty about relying on SLA is, you know, we're advisory, and so they can just go around us, and then we have really no consequence aside from telling them both 311. I'd suggest we bring it down to 100. I think that's important in terms of capacity.
Actually, can I just on that, the current capacity is already 200 under the existing zoning, so I think it's in fact out of scope to propose that change. So just want to flag that. Yeah, so I mean, I think I wouldn't characterize this as a drastic change over what's permitted today. It's really we already permit ticketed musical entertainment up to 200 people in C1 and C2 districts today. It's really allowing the dancing and allowing things like expanding the not just musical entertainment, but you could have a comedy club, for instance. You could have comedy entertainment. For whatever reason, 1961 music entertainment was allowed, but comedy wasn't. We think that's sort of arbitrary. And in fact, a lot of people agree that in hindsight, some of these regulations are even perhaps discriminatory. And so that's also a concern, and was a concern with the cabaret laws that were repealed a few years ago. I do hear your concerns. I think, and you're not the only community board that has shared them, but I would say what we're proposing here isn't a drastic change over what's permitted today. And
That's what I was gonna say to your comment, that like changing the one variable of allowing dancing, you know, and allowing the dance capacity and hours and, you know, liquor sales and stuff. It's not a big change. Things are saying that they're valid, but they aren't going to be affected by allowing dancing.
It's eliminating distinctions that there really isn't.
Exactly. We've all been to the bar where there's a sign on the wall that says no dancing allowed. You know, dance, you know what I mean?
No, I
But also-
understand, and I don't want to be a killjoy or impact the operator's bottom line. You know, if it's successful, that's great, because that brings people to the our area. It's just the you worry about what happens if they're in the cellar in the first floor, and then they take another floor. All of a sudden, we will have people won't want to live here. It will be the noisy area. You know, I'm one who.
Well, there still be a limit.
I'm a
of 250.
preservationist, so I
you
will
know.
slow.
No,
You know. So may I, so we all sort of have an understanding of what we're talking about. Dancing. But there also was on the Upper West Side, many movie theaters. And which didn't operate as dancing, but attracted a lot of people, sometimes waiting in line and so on. And did that. There are also quite a few theaters which are in a lot of trouble now and are craving audiences and may make for the quieter block and yet be integral to the character of the Upper West Side, but more significant, contributing to Manhattan as a place of art and amusement, if I may say, and a bunch of other things. So this is very, very difficult.
Positive.
And I understand, because even as we've been working on the sheds of the outdoor, mostly when people have come to the few meetings we've had, they've referred to, they can't take that the restaurant, they explode into the street. That's what bothers them. But what we do want to continue to encourage, it seems to me, is a variety of different activities and uses that go across, if you like, amusements, theater, movies, art, and some new things that people are inventing that bring together art and different kinds of people.
Okay,
It's
but
very
I know-
important.
Eshel, it's different needs.
Yeah, is that number 10?
I know.
I mean, the theater is very, very different from a club. The
I agree.
impacts
I
are
understand.
very different. What I'm curious about and gonna look up is what the size regulations are in C1, C2, and C4. There's a difference on Broadway, which I would like to point out is basically a residential street, I live on Broadway. And, you know, we're having clubs on Amsterdam, which I believe is mezzanine C2. And you're gonna have a lot of clubs. It's also a residential street. Fewer people, but still a residential street.
This isn't really changing it, so is
Yeah,
there?
I feel like we're really stuck on something that's pretty minor and so
Yeah.
sake of time.
agree.
Number 9 doesn't really change much, right?
No,
So,
it should
should we just move on?
It's just, it's rationalizing the
Right.
distinction between how many clubs.
Right.
Oh, I'm not even thinking about that. We already have 2 comedy clubs.
Yeah,
on the
so
other
that's
side. So
good, let it do
That's
it.
10.
I mean, that is a totally different issue.
And, you know, if you don't count the community board.
That's true. But
Profit.
I just want us to understand that the impacts of a club with music and dancing are very, very different. From a comedy club,
Right.
from a movie theater.
Yeah.
You know, and we're never gonna get the New Yorker back, or Metro is never gonna come back. But so be the club.
Well, West Park Church.
Okay, so
Don't
Okay.
Don't go there.
What's the current, what is the current limit of dance?
I have to look it up.
I'm sorry, was there a question for me? I couldn't quite hear it.
What is the current limit for dancing?
I mean, it's just not allowed. It depends. I mean, it's certain, you have to, currently in most places on the Upper West Side, you can't have dancing. You can have it, you'd have to be, I think in the C4 district, I don't have the rules right in front of me, but it's just like, if you have dancing, then you kicks you into a different use and you're allowed in fewer places. So if you have a restaurant where you want dancing or a bar where you want dancing, or if someone, you know, hears a song they like on the jukebox and gets up and dances, technically illegal under zoning today. I mean, and it's just hard to enforce, but also, I mean, it's really not a problem, I think, in most cases.
This is a change.
Yeah,
And, you know, Peggy's point may have some validity. Do we want to, if dancing is not permitted, and we want to allow some dance, we can suggest our own limit.
yeah. Okay.
And 100 sounds, you know, better than.
Well, think of the revenue for having private parties. And, you know, your 50th wedding anniversary and they want to dance cheap.
Have to watch out for those ones.
Yeah.
Wasn't the city planning saying that
But that's
that's
a
already,
private parties that
that's
are
already
covered.
200-person limit, so we can't somehow walk it back to 100 when it's already.
No, there's
But you
no,
don't have to have
No,
200.
the dancing,
Yeah, but.
the dancing, it's not
Establishment overall.
dancing is 0.
Zero. Right.
So we're increasing it.
Okay, I don't want to get stuck on this, so I'm fine with 100 dancing if that's
Percentage of the
technically possible.
capacity of the venue.
Yeah, I should clarify the approach in zoning is that we're removing dancing as a concept of something you regulate through land use. So dancing doesn't become a thing that is regulated. In zoning, it just becomes we're just not regulating it. We're not proposing a different sort of means of regulating it.
Both have
Yeah, we're saying you can operate that bar up to 200 people like you do today, and you can have dancing there too, because we're removing that restriction.
Is dancing a land use issue?
Many
I
other.
would argue
You'll
no.
be amazed what is considered a land use issue.
One question I did have is, we, given all of the changes for, higher population, is there gonna be a land use change to, what do you call it, the fire wardens and things? How will that have to change?
I mean, they have you're talking about like the place of the HACO place of assembly permits? Is that? Yeah. Well, we're not changing. They're actually more stringent than this. I think that they have
Apartments anyway, this is not part.
5. So I mean, it doesn't. It
We don't have to
doesn't.
touch.
It
Sorry?
should.
Yeah.
You should know. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to change. It won't have to. It won't be affected by this.
Let's see where we are on this one. How many people want to limit the size before?
I don't think we can, because we're no longer regulating them, period. No,
I think that's on the table, you know, as to whether we should go on.
Oh. I would be
in this
very.
provision as
opposed
it
to that.
has to be citywide. You would.
If somebody feels like dancing on the bar, I mean, it's crazy. It should not. Why in the world would you restrict dancing if you're allowed music?
So is that consensus?
Yeah, we can regulate how many people can be there, and how late they can sell open. They open, if they can sell liquor, not sell liquor.
Yeah, there are a lot of.
Dancing, no.
Well, people,
Those are
whatever.
those are not our issues, those are not zoning issues.
Yes, here's a hot button amusement.
That one's big.
All right.
Okay, that one I did look up. There are no size limitations for C4, which means that they can put in the kind of amusements they're putting in Times Square on Broadway. Like
Arcade.
arcade,
Yeah, that's not good.
they're putting in a Ferris wheel, one of the things that.
Oh,
That
casino.
Whoever thought they would put in a Ferris wheel instead.
But they didn't.
Well, they didn't.
They did.
There you go.
I hate to say it, I was walking by a lot of those discussions in my conference room in my previous incarnation. We'll leave it at that.
So, but the thing is, this really needs size restriction. Otherwise you get someone with a full block.
What about that?
Oh, so it says 10,000 square feet.
For C1.
For C1.
Is that most of our,
Which is a lot.
so then we're okay with that, maybe saying this, expanding it through other.
Square feet.
It's half a block and it's going back down half a block.
100 by 100,
Uh-huh.
so that might be half a block on the average. Yeah.
It could only go down, it could go down 100 feet on the side street. And it's 100 feet on the other.
Well, we've got to protect Barnes and Noble, don't we?
What?
We got to protect Barnes and Noble.
Okay.
Got 100, it's got 200 feet of frontage though.
I'm sorry I was late, but. did
Also,
anybody
over off of
else
Broadway.
see,
It is, it's having.
Parking as a
No,
result.
I'm saying,
No, and there's
building
a
I'm
lot
talking
of that here and.
Oh, it's a taxpayer, yes.
There's
yes,
questions.
that's,
That's
that's,
gonna be a big
That-
thing.
Not
But
okay,
we're not
no,
looking
that
at
means they- okay.
no, I understand Zabar's owns it, yeah.
So, you know, here it is.
So what type of amusements do you envision?
Are you
Okay.
asking me? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what we've seen a lot of our new things like, I mean, you do hear the random stories of like the indoor Ferris wheel in Times Square. That's not really what we're expecting and what we've seen in most places. I think mostly what we're seeing, you see there's some of these like virtual reality, you see some indoor mini golf. You know, I have an 11-year-old daughter and a 13-year-old daughter. I'm constantly taking them to birthday parties in manufacturing zones in Long Island City and Brooklyn, but for things like a indoor trampoline thing. It's only allowed in manufacturing zones today. I'd love to be able to just take them to a birthday party in Midtown, but I have to, you know. I mean, those are more the kind of things we see. I mean, I hear the concerns on the size limitation, but I think there are some size limitations in the neighborhood on C1, C2s, the neighborhood commercial streets. But I think similar to other retail uses, we would allow larger ones in the more, we would kind of be treating them as we would treat a large retail use in those districts. So we are trying to treat them similar to how we treat retail uses in the zoning districts where they would be permitted. So in terms of what we're envisioning, that's what we expect. That's what we see the market doing. There's a lot of demand for this. We're seeing a lot of it in places like Greenpoint, Williamsburg, and Long Island City, where you have M zones that don't actually restrict this. I think you would see it at a smaller scale in other places.
What would prevent the creation of an arcade that attracts hundreds of young people outside the community? Now, I understand Nick golf and the birthday parties for kids, trampolines, are kind of a low impact. use.
Yeah.
But the amusement uses that are high impact.
Well,
No
in the
distinction.
in the C1, C2s, you're going to have a size limitation there, so that's to limit.
Where the high.
Well, like an arcade.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering like what uses what kinds of examples you might be thinking of.
It's like a lot of people in one place, that's
Yeah.
a concern. I can't think of really one.
Well, it could be a
Chelsea
health
Piers
club,
North.
swimming.
Chelsea Piers North.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, no joke.
What would be wrong with
I
that?
feel like that'd be.
We could joke around.
Yeah, I
think
know. I'm
that's
like,
fine.
I don't think
Like,
there's a
let's go.
problem. I want to play like ping pong inside. Right.
That wouldn't be. It should not. Helpful.
Swimming gyms, I think are.
Health clubs have a separate.
I used to live right by an arcade that actually sells liquor. That was the least of, they've already said. That's the least of they would probably, I mean, bars and clubs, that's gonna, I mean. An arcade is not gonna be the issue. I mean, half the clientele are kids, teenagers, you know.
Right.
Families, you know, families, you know, parents taking their kids there to play video games. Yes, you get some adults, you get a little bit of partying, but very little compared to most things. Very little compared to even a restaurant.
So with size limits, are we like okay with these uses? I feel okay with it.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay,
I think so.
bowling alleys,
Moving along.
things that actually are on the second floor now, we're gonna move down to the first floor because it's more desirable. Like bowling alley, depends what you want. Badminton,
I grew up. On
Yeah.
92nd West. Bowling alley. where back when.
on the second floor,
Better.
was on the ground floor, the second,
Second floor.
that's what I'm saying, the second floor uses are gonna start coming down.
All right. Number 11. Home occupation.
Well,
All right.
This is what everyone does now. Everyone does it.
Right.
It's rationalizing this.
No, we're not talking about all three employees though. It's going from 25% of your apartment to 50%, so.
It was 49.
Yeah, we're not.
Thank you. It's
Every-
going from one employee to three.
Right.
This is not really a whole lot. And granted that there was a list of occupations and it was odd, like real estate. Real estate brokers were not allowed because it was felt that there would be a lot of traffic to and from the apartment. The minute you have this, you have a cross between light manufacturing and heavy duty usage. I mean, when you have 3 employees, what in the world are you doing? That's a lot of people.
I haven't really said anything because I really, number one, I haven't had a problem with any of the other provisions really, and number two, I thought a lot of our discussion had been off point and not really understanding what was in the proposal, but anyway, this one does bother me, and I agree with Louisa. Even though co-op and condo, their rules will overlay whatever the zoning provisions may be, this is, I think, quite troublesome, for the reasons that Louisa has started to talk about. And so this one, I think we ought to just close.
You know, honestly, I'm compelled to be like, that's fine with me, because I kind of want housing to be housing, and at the end, like, if you're one employee and 25% space seems fine to me. I don't know why we need to touch it.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I don't oppose that. I oppose the change.
Yeah.
So, all right,
Can I ask you a really stupid question?
Sure.
I don't think anybody on the community board is in this position, but the home occupation, somebody can employ 3 or 4 people in their apartment just as their full staff. I've been in some ridiculous apartments.
I don't think that's what this is.
No, I understand,
Yeah, they're not working for the same, they're not,
but I'm saying it becomes a dodge.
but they're not the employee of your business. You're saying,
you could have 10 children also.
You have to, well, yes, this is the kind of upper west side version of tenement houses. Yeah, but not-
Do we have a consensus that we want to hold?
Yeah.
Moving on.
Could just go back to the vote. There is a very legitimate discussion here about trying to get home occupations modernized to realize what people do at home today. Because it would not be unreasonable for somebody working at home to have having 1 or 2 people supporting them. And that's not within the current bounds.
Yeah, well, I don't want a hairdresser with 1 employee or 3 employees in my building, or, I think there are plenty of people who can run small businesses out of their apartments, not just employers. But it's quite, if somebody wants to cut my hair in their apartment, fine, but somebody who's got 3 other people cutting hair in their apartment, no thanks.
Okay, but for example, if you're a writer and you have 2 people working on a book with you.
It's quiet.
Chairs.
Yeah, but I'm saying that's not permitted under the current.
Well, I think those other people come and go.
they don't have to be located there.
Right.
They could work from their own home or from an office somewhere.
I know, but like, what if you want that to happen? What about like someone with an Etsy business, they make something? They need some help with preparing all their packaging,
You
whatever.
might have people who come in occasionally. But when they say, 3 people, they mean that people will come in.
You can imagine uses that we deny, but this does not distinguish. between
Right.
nine-
Well, how
But
would,
maybe we wanna identify them,
that's one thing, rewrite the definition of what a home occupation is, which is very
That's
different
what
than
they're
what's
doing.
happening here.
But the thing is, we used to get a lot of phone calls. People start baking. And then they sell to the restaurant down on the corner. And then all of a sudden they're expanding and they're calling city planning to find out what they have to do after the fact. Because they need a professional stove, they're cooking 24 hours, there are all of a sudden the trucks that are picking up cookies and baked goods and taking them all over the city. A lot of the baked goods that we buy in the stores started in somebody's kitchen.
Ask Madge.
Exactly. That actually started, okay.
But those,
But the thing is, you don't want that because of the.
well, there are also fire code issues as
And
well.
health department.
People who just thought, do not listen to.
I don't know, maybe it's
Fire
the Christmas
department.
Season or something, but we're getting a little,
If we're at the end of this,
we're on 12, which is,
We're very.
We're on 11,
on 11, I think we said that we don't,
Oh, okay, we're on to 12.
we're on to 12, and
Completely agree.
the automobile servicing really has no place.
Yeah, I agree.
okay,
Sorry.
The indoors.
okay.
So are we fine with 12 or are we skipping?
But no,
We're against it.
we're against 12.
No,
No.
12
We
design
agree.
rules for buildings to contribute to surrounding.
Oh, all right, then I have the wrong.
Well, something says with light auto service.
Isn't
Yeah,
12
wait.
line orders?
No, the lighter,
I'm sorry.
I'm in the deck.
light
on
is
city plan.
13, the
Oh, I
lighter
don't-
auto service is 13. That wasn't what I sent.
Oh, sorry, I'm basically.
So, Proposal 11 was home occupations and proposal 12 is new streetscape regulations.
Right, we have, nobody had a problem.
Fine with
Okay.
And 13 is the light auto servicing and the
that. We don't want
15,
that.
15 is one that we, should discuss.
So actually, I want to just make sure you understand the light auto servicing. We are putting in more restrictions. This is contrary to most of the proposal where we're loosening restrictions on businesses. This is, I think, one exception where we're saying in neighborhood commercial streets, we should make it a little harder to do what's shown in the pictures in the presentation, which is having, cars sort of operating on the street. So I just want to make sure you understand that because it's based on what I'm
Okay.
hearing. Sounds like you would be supportive of this, but I don't want to presume. And just what, yeah.
Restrictions are, no presentations were made to us about any restrictions.
I think we have one place left on the Upper West Side that services automobiles.
Yeah, okay, all right, so that.
Yeah, we're fine with 13.
Okay.
Fine with 13.
13 is,
That's the auto one we found it, because it's making things more strict. Yeah.
well,
We're
in what way are we making it more strict?
Requires a
Could there
VSA.
be a service station on Columbus or Amsterdam Avenue?
Requires a VSA special permit.
Well, the garages that are on the Upper West Side have limited things they can do, like pump up your tires, wash your car, put oil in, or whatever.
Can't even charge your car. They don't have that.
Yeah, but it's very limited.
But there are no garages on Columbus Avenue or Amsterdam Avenue. The
Correct.
question is, would
Well, they
this
are.
allow it?
No,
They're on
No.
side streets. There's several garages.
You mean?
What you're talking about,
Yes.
service
I think he's
garage,
talking
but
about
on the
But
avenue.
they do,
gas
they do,
stations that.
no, but they do service for the customers because they used to have gasoline and things there.
Well,
They can top up the oil, wash your car, pump up your
that's
tires.
not within their consumer affairs license though.
Yeah, that's typical.
No, these are,
What is like auto servicing? What is the definition of it?
I don't
May-
know now.
Can I explain what we're proposing here?
Yeah.
Yeah, so what we're right now, you can do auto service and repair in C2 and C4 districts. What we're proposing is that can only be new ones can only be permitted by BSA special permit, and they'd have to be characterized as what we are newly calling light auto repair. So it is I mean, I don't think you see a lot of it in these places, but you do see some of it because it was permitted. But we're making it a lot harder not a lot, we're making it harder. You'd have to go through a process to do it all. And the only kind of thing that would be permitted would be qualified as light auto repair. And I think there are DMV licensing standards that we'd be referencing, but I can reconfirm that.
DMV is on the
like the garage on Main
inspections
Street, right,
and
between-
consumer affairs is on the servicing.
I still, you know,
Oh,
I'm not, I'm clear that this proposal would prevent light auto servicing on major vehicular avenues.
Generally, you can't even get you can't get a curb cut on a wide street.
Well, I know, but this, if it were permitted by zoning, you probably could get a curb.
No, because that's DOT.
Well, it's, you know, it's. Is there some way to restrict it to side streets under the zoning?
I mean, only if they had any commercial zoning. They probably don't. Mostly the overlays are mostly going to be on your major corridors. They're probably not allowed at all because it'd be residential district. And we're not changing that. Yeah, I mean, to do it, you could. I mean, you could have, like, in theory, a certain C2 or C4 district. You know, you might have like a gas station with some small auto repair component. It's conceivable that you would get that. We're saying to do that, you'd have to go through a BSA special permit process, which you don't have to do today.
So those garages that are currently, we have several, I don't know, ones that offer parking and some valeting, you know, as I said, pumping the tires up, if they need to fill the oil or wash the car.
I guarantee that somebody wants to have wants to their autos have more expansive definition.
Yeah. Fair enough.
This really seems kind of irrelevant to us.
Yeah.
I don't think,
I'm on this. Totally.
I don't think within the lifetime of anybody here, and I only go back further than you think, that there's been a garage,
Yeah.
an auto garage, sorry, a automobile service or gas station open new on the Upper West Side.
I do.
Can I?
You know what? If it did, it might be a good thing.
I'm up, one,
Is it on number 14 or number 13?
Talking about 50.
Wait, we're at 15?
No, I'm sorry.
God, let that be true.
I want to request,
13.
Yeah.
13.
alright? Okay. Going back to 10, I'm sorry. There has to be a special permit for outdoor entertainment or amusement areas that are open. I propose that we also, the special permit to be expanded for indoor uses. Not a problem. It means it would come before the community board.
About that.
Wait, for me, we're going back to
10, yeah.
Because it's so intangible and it keeps changing. We don't know what it's going to be.
I would go.
sure.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we're allowing auto repair.
So, wait, sorry, you mean we're supporting the more restrictions?
We're supporting more.
Okay, great, cool.
And finally, residential campuses.
That doesn't
I have one more.
Which is.
I'll ask our city plan, but I think this may have some relevance here. And that is, there are various provisions legalizing existing basement and cellar units, right? And with various standards for habitat, for
Habitation.
The report that you have from the, which is the different aspects of the city.
I know,
Has nothing to do with this.
I think this is the next piece.
I apologize, because I think that one has considerable relevance for our neighborhood. So I apologize.
Well, no, the problem, that's also
Yeah.
light and air. Light and
So,
air and
yeah.
equivalent.
Yeah,
Yes,
we'll
yes.
be back for that on City of Yes for housing opportunity. That's not in the public review process yet, but it will be, and I'm sure we will be
Sorry. I was
back.
gonna-
And we'll be answering all of your questions and hearing all of your comments, but
Thanks.
yeah.
Types of uses, what types of uses do you envision in residential campuses?
Yeah, I mean, so this is primarily uses that would serve the residents. So you might have like a small grocery store, for instance, or a bodega, dry cleaners. I mean, those seem like the most likely uses. A coffee shop. It would be
How
subject
well-
to an authorization, so there would an environmental review as well.
And this would apply to the NYCHA campuses, is that?
So
What's
I mean,
relevant?
NYCHA it would be any residential campus, but and so they're not just NYCHA campuses. Most of the residential campuses in the city are NYCHA, and they do see they for whatever reason a lot of them were not mapped with commercial overlays, so there is a real dearth of services on NYCHA campuses. But there are some residential campuses in the city that are not public housing. And yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
for
not
example,
this-
there's
so I-
the first Durst building, Lena.
Makes sense.
Has some
And it goes to
functions.
the-
If you take Lincoln Tower, for example,
Parkhurst.
it's all.
Sorry?
houses.
Parkhurst Village is another
Right?
place.
But
I'm just looking at kind of an individual building, which is in a commercial district, and they have these in their lot.
Are there criteria?
Yeah, it's a good example, of it, right? Why can't they have a bodega there, coffee shop, right?
It's better.
Like Lincoln Tower.
That
right?
makes-
They allow like a dentist office.
It will be, there's.
But that's always been a community facility.
Huh?
Dentist office has always been a community.
No, we're
facility.
saying-
Yeah.
So that was always. an
But
aspect.
yeah,
You know,
Lincoln Towers has
not
a
sure,
drive-through.
not building and Lincoln Towers.
Actually, it used to have
The whole building you were explaining,
Yeah.
making it suburban
Yeah.
and with cars. Now, I mean, you want to have.
It's changed.
Sounds like we're supportive, right?
Yeah.
Supportive.
Supportive.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
nice.
Are there is there a listing of uses that would be permitted or not permitted, or is it simply subject to environmental?
There's C1 uses.
I believe it's mostly use group 6, but I'll reconfirm. I don't know, Ariel, do you happen to know offhand? I believe it's use group 6, but I can.
I think in general,
We'll reconfirm on that, but I believe it's the new use group 6, which I will also on that clarify that the question that was raised earlier about the size distinctions and the collapsing of the use groups. The size distinctions that would remain today would remain in place in those zoning districts. So like the places that don't allow you to have a 10,000 square foot, anything bigger than a 10,000 square foot retail shop, those restrictions would remain. It's just written differently in the zoning but in actually a way that I think is more coherent. So I want to sort of clarify that. So likely the spirit of that would apply here. It would probably be treated essentially like a commercial overlay in most cases, and probably how the commission would be viewing that we see this as like local serving retail, sort of C1, C2 kind of uses. But I'll double check to make sure I'm not speaking out of turn.
Would they, on the proposal, would there be an opportunity for the residents of the campuses to weigh in on the subject?
It would go to the community board, as all authorizations do. And my guess is, I mean, the applicant would probably, I mean, in NYCHA's case, it would be NYCHA, and they have their own process for involving their residents. I think for something like that, I think they would be required to their own process to have sort of get residential to get input from their residents. In another case, a large residential campus, I think it would probably depend on who's operating that. I mean, in some cases, it might be a large co-op, in which case the board is probably making some decision to move forward with it. But they would be required to come to the community board in any event. Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
The question is this, because we've done such a good job of trying to clean up the west side and compartmentalize where food is sold and distributed. And here we are opening the door again for people to put in snack bars or a coffee shop or whatever. And I don't know what the health standards are these days, but you know, we have rats running up and down my street on 88th Street. I mean, they're cute now because the babies have been born. But the thing is, it's impossible to try to keep New York City clean if you're going to start adding more small bodega or coffee shops that may not have the what do you call it, the operating help to keep their establishment free of garbage.
So rats are on residential streets because of the inadequate regulation, which sanitation is now
Oh, I know.
dealing with. I mean, 92nd Street, I first walking along, it's like, and there are no stores within 2 blocks.
Yeah,
So
no, I
it's a
don't
whole
want to
other-
contribute.
This year was
I
better
don't
than
want to
last.
contribute to that already. I would want to have some protection in there that they do the exterminating or
What?
control. Well, any such commercial.
Talk to Barzini.
This is a sanitation
regulations
issue,
that any other one
but
is.
not
Yeah.
a zoning.
Containerization, yeah.
It could be a zoning issue if somebody comes in and doesn't do their job in terms of
And
having
it's still
to
not a
sanitize.
zoning issue.
It's a
because
sanitation.
It's a sanitation issue. And if the residents of a NYCHA project think that it would be good to have a bodega on the corner,
Yeah, really.
and if the community board has no objection, then there's an environmental review and it comes up clean. The operator of that bodega is still gonna be subject to sanitation. They can get tickets and believe me, if you're in a housing project, in a NYCHA housing project, and you do something that the residents don't like,
It's true.
We hear about it.
we hear about it and you hear about it.
Fair enough.
So,
Okay, thank
All
you.
right, so I think that
unless anybody has anything else, I can draft something. It can be very simple and circulate it and get comments and hopefully be ready by our January meeting.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
Wonderful. And we don't know what that date is,
What?
the date of the January meeting.
We don't?
No.
Well, as I said, I'm gonna send a poll out, and I'm gonna look at the calendar and kind of look at some dates, and then I can send something out.
Just pull this group, because we're probably the people that are most likely to attend anyway.
I don't know if that's fair method.
I was going to
No.
poll both the housing and the land use committees, actually. I'd sent one out, actually, but unfortunately not everybody responded to the poll. But even so, it just was kind of a split. 50-50.
See if we can resolve it. Right. But the only alternative is to meet twice a month.
No.
We also use red cases
Definitely not
around,
gonna work.
please, we also use red cases around my house, so some people.
Well, it means I can spot it at a distance.
Which works.
Yeah.
Yeah, but people got a chance to, you know, unfortunately, it's because of red phone. And so, my daughter's house, but she lost 4 years ago.
Do we tell?
I have not found it.
Thank you.
So what-
Thank you, city planning.